Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Welcome to Consider Islam. Live with Kenny Bomer, an affiliate and founder of the Consider This TV network. Any views, actions, or comments made by panelists during this broadcast do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of CTTV network hosts or affiliates. This channel and its affiliates do not claim any right over any of the graphics, images, or songs used in this video that are protected under copyright by other individuals or organizations. All rights are reserved to the respective copyright owners. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Non-profit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. The works on this channel are protected under the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, DMCA, of 1998, which amended the existing U.S. copyright law to address important parts of the relationship between copyright and the Internet. Now here is your host, Kenny Bomer.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Consider Islam live with yours truly, Kenny Bomer. My name is Kenny Bomer, and I do bear witness that there's no God other than Allah, and I bear witness that Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is his final servant and seal of all prophets. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. Look what's going on. We have Islamophobia still running rampant. With everything going on, with all the transgender nonsense going on and so forth, we have Islamophobia still running rampant. This is an article that came out today that we're going to discuss. It says that in the headlines, U.S. releases global terrorist attack warnings to Americans. U.S. releases global terrorist attack warnings to Americans. Well, I think instead of fear-mongering and trying to instill fear into Americans here in the United States as well as abroad, it might be a good idea to get control of all the gun violence, especially with school about to start soon and all the mass shootings taking place in schools and other places in the United States. But instead of that, we have the United States government continuing to propagate fears about Islam. There's no other way to look at it. It's just the fact of the matter. After all these years after 9/11, 2 decades plus, we're still listening to rhetoric about 9/11. And in this article that was published today, we have an example of that. Before we get started, I want to make sure everyone can hear me in the chat. I want to say Assalamu alaikum. I see A.K. Manning in the chat. He's always welcome to come and join me. I'd like to join me for a discussion. But here, all these years after 9/11, we still have this rhetoric being utilized in the media and so forth. So we're going to talk about this. I'm going to read this article, and at some point, I'm going to open up the panel for a live discussion on this topic, if you'd like to engage in it. If not, then we'll just move on, and I'll proceed with my evening. Have some other things I need to tend to. But inshallah, if you'd like to come, I'm going to be posting the link in the chat here shortly. So A.K. Manning says that he's driving right now. Okay, make sure you drive safe. I'm sure you'll probably be listening, but may God, our Creator, be watching over you every mile that you drive. He's driving over the road. So, but let's get into this article here briefly. Okay, so it says U.S. releases global terrorist attack warnings to Americans. And it says the U.S. State Department issued a new terrorist attack warning on Tuesday. Well, isn't that surprising? The U.S. State Department issued a new terrorist attack warning on Tuesday evening, urging Americans to take quote unquote worldwide precautions or worldwide caution when traveling due to a heightened risk of quote unquote terrorist attacks and anti American quote unquote, they got this in parentheses, what I'm saying quote unquote, anti American violence. So they want to make sure that they make those things stand out. Worldwide caution, terrorist attacks, anti-American violence. All those three things are in their own quotations in this article. These people, man. Listen, if you've studied Islamophobia like I have and the tactics they use, you would understand why I'm laughing. If you don't understand why I'm laughing, it's not funny. It's actually disgusting. But it's like, man, come on. You know what? Before we go any further, I'd like for everyone who's listening now or possibly in the future, God willing, to consider this question as I read this article and we proceed with the show. Ask yourselves. I asked this question in my book, Consider Islam, Disproving the Patriots of Propaganda. Right. So I asked this question: have you, or think? Please ponder on this as we proceed. Think about this. If you're a non-Muslim and you're listening now or in the future, have you or anyone that you personally know had any Muslims trying to come and harass you and force you to accept Islam or cause you any kind of problem whatsoever? Think about that as we proceed. Has it ever happened? But are you in fear that it might happen and it could happen and it's happening close by? Is it happening close by? Okay. Now, what is happening close by is these people going into our schools, our elementary schools and other schools, and so anyway, they're and killing people in these mass shootings. That's happening, and it's usually white males doing it, uh, far exceeding any Muslim attacks whatsoever. Anyway, but just ponder on that question. Has any Muslim or group of Muslims ever come and tried to oppress you, your family, your friends, anyone that you know personally in any way whatsoever, and trying to force you to accept Islam or anything else? Think about that as we proceed. So again, they got these in quotation marks: worldwide caution, terrorist attacks, and anti-American violence in the wake of the death of Ayman al-Zawahiri, a terrorist leader who the Biden administration claimed was killed in a U.S. drone strike on Monday. It says the State Department said in the alert that it remains concerned about the continued threat of terrorist attacks, demonstrations, and other violent actions against U.S. citizens and interests overseas. Okay. All right. So, I went overseas. Not just recently. I went to Jerusalem, and there's Muslims, Christians, and Jews there, and we all got along just fine. Matter of fact, we did a lot of work together. As a matter of fact, we got along just fine. Anyway, so they're trying to instill fear into the American people here at home, and it's always a situation where it's us over here versus them over there. It's always like that, right? And these people abroad, they're out to get you. They're trying to they want to change your way of life. They want to take over your life, take over your religion, and force Islam upon you, and all these things. So the article goes on to say, it added that there is this is a quote. They put this in parentheses. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. Yeah. It says, it added that there is a higher potential for anti-American violence given the death of Ayman al-Zawahiri. As though Muslims are going to conspire with one another and they want retribution for this Ayman al-Zawahiri. I don't know who he is. Okay, you say that he's associated with Taliban. Uh, I don't care. I don't know him, and I don't have anything to do with him, and I don't know anyone who does know him or has anything to do with him. Who cares? I mean, I'm not saying if this is a Muslim brother and he's not, he's been killed unjustly and so forth. I care about that, obviously. If he was doing some type of wrongdoing, I would care about that, obviously. I don't support that in any way whatsoever. But this is fear mongering, right? This is fear mongering. Let's make sure that they know that we are still trying to hunt down these 9/11 guys. It's going to get into this here shortly. These 9/11 conspirators, we're still on the hunt for them, and they're still out there coming to get us. It's just ongoing. It's relentless, never ending. Okay, so it goes on to say, and once again, parentheses, current information suggests that terrorist organizations continue to plan terrorist attacks against U.S. interests in multiple regions across the globe. Man, come on, man. There's 1.5 to 1.8 billion Muslims in the world, and if Islam was what you think it is, it would be a very, very obvious. It'd be very obvious. But what they're trying to do, once again, they're using this rhetoric, and again, putting the stuff in these quotations in this article, trying to draw emphasis and on these particular phrases and so forth. Current information suggests that terrorist organizations continue to plan terrorist attacks against U.S. interests in multiple regions across the globe. How do you know? Have you talked to them? Did they give you the information? How do you know that that's going on? Yes, I know that America's got a big reach, right? I do realize that they've got spies. They up to all kinds of shenanigans. But come on, man. How do you really? So this man was just killed a couple of days ago, and you've got all this information from across the globe that the U.S. citizens are at risk or in danger. It goes on to say, these attacks may employ a wide variety of tactics, including suicide operations. Well, there we go. Assassinations, kidnappings, hijackings, and bombings. Okay. All across the globe. You've gathered all this intel in this short period of time because this one man was killed. Now all these Muslims are going to get together and they're going to start attacking, innocent civilians and so forth. And Islam says not to fight those who are not fighting against you. I mean, come on, man. Come on. With all the signs about the approaching day of judgment and all of the knowledge of the Quran and the example of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, guiding Muslims to avoid oppressing anyone, even with their lips and with their tongue. But they insist that Muslims are gathering together, conspiring with one another, like they do, as a matter of fact, like the governments do, like the politicians do, to go and attack and kill others who are innocent. Because let's face it, someone could make a claim against someone else. He could say this al-Zawahiri did this and did that, but can we prove it? Do we really know that he did anything? We really don't know. But the point being is that if he did, okay, well, there needs to be some justice done. I don't have a problem with that. But a lot of innocent people have been killed by the United States government, and that's a fact. And again, contemplate on the question that I asked earlier. Have you your family members, your friends, or anyone that you know been harassed in any way, much less attacked by Muslims trying to force Islam upon you and trying to force you to follow the Sharia and so forth? Has it happened? No, it hasn't. Everyone listening right now, no, it hasn't. I know it hasn't, and you know it hasn't, and the government knows it hasn't, but they keep trying to feed this narrative, and they have an agenda behind it. There's no doubt about it. It says the department recommended that American travelers, quote unquote, maintain a high level of vigilance and practice good situational awareness. Americans should also monitor their local news and maintain contact with the nearest U.S. embassy or consulate. Well, we need to practice good situational awareness in the United States with all the nonsense going on here, with all these Caucasian males and all these firearms, uh, you know, all these mass shootings. We need to practice good situational awareness here and maintain and monitor local news and maintain contact with local authorities here. That's where let's be honest, man. I mean, think about it. These people go into these schools, they kill all these children and teachers and so forth, but they don't call it terrorism. How is it not terrorism, and how and why would they not use that type of rhetoric when it's happened time and time and time again? Of course, blaming it on mental illness and so forth, but they never mention religion and they never mention terrorism. But they've got articles like this coming time and time and time again for years, for decades, it's been happening, trying to instill fear into the American people against their Muslim neighbors. They want the American people to be in fear of their Muslim neighbors, just like they wanted the Muslim people to be in fear of Japanese citizens during the World War II era. They did the same thing. We'll talk about that in the book as well. The book Consider Islam. I'll be honest with you. I'm sick of it, man. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. Let's go on. I'll just get on a rampage and I'll lose my train of my objective here. Anyway, okay, it says the state also warned that U.S. government facilities worldwide could temporarily close or suspend public services due to security concerns, but noted that U.S. embassies and consulates will make, in parentheses, will make every effort to provide emergency services to U.S. citizens. Oh my goodness, they're coming. The Muslims are on the hunt. The Muslims are on the prowl. They're coming to get you. Prior to traveling abroad, it says, the State Department recommends Americans review country-specific travel advisories and information pages on travel.state.gov. Travels can, I guess it's supposed to say travelers can also sign up for the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program to receive emergency messages. It says, in parentheses, the department uses these security messages to convey information about terrorist threats, security incidents, planned demonstrations, natural disasters, etc., the department explained. Now, what they do is they use those to propagate hatred and fear against Muslims. It says the precision airstrike that took out al-Zawahiri occurred on Saturday night. U.S. time when an unmanned U.S. drone fired two Hellfire missiles at the terrorist while he was positioned on the balcony of his safe house in downtown Kabul, Afghanistan. His safe house. So, come on, man. So he's at his quote unquote safe house, right? He's in hiding apparently because he's at this safe house. But he's just out there nonchalantly on the balcony, just hanging out, enjoying the weather. And the U.S. just happens to get sight of him and launches this drone. He's at the safe house, though. Now, I don't know about anyone else, but if I was in, trying to run from the authorities, and I was using a safe house, I think I'd stay in the house as much as possible and not be seen outside. I wonder what time of day was. It says this precision airstrike took out al-Zawahiri. Occurred on Saturday night. I wonder. Of course, they've got great technology. It was nighttime, so that would might be a reason for someone to feel a little bit courageous and willing to step outside in the dark. But with that being the case, if that's the case, if it's dark enough that he would step outside, how could they really tell if it was him or not? Or anyway, it just doesn't make a whole lot of logical sense to me, especially when that is mentioned right before this next paragraph. Biden called al-Zawahiri the deputy of terrorist mastermind. Biden called al-Zawahiri the deputy of terrorist mastermind Osama bin Laden, who was quote in parentheses, who was deeply involved in the planning of 9/11. Now here we go, 9/11 again, right? Here we are again, 9/11, 9/11, 9/11, 9/11. That's all they want to talk about is 9/11. How about talking about getting these guns out of the hands of these white Caucasian males who are shooting up classrooms all over the nation? How about that? How about that? That's terrorism. How about these domestic terrorists that you never call domestic terrorists? Very seldom do we see that, unless someone insists. Maybe he might have a writer here or there that, brings the noise with it, but otherwise they don't call these people terrorists. They just don't. It says that he was quote unquote deeply involved in the planning of 9/11. How do you know that? How do you know it? Were you there? These government officials, you liars, you hypocrites, you killers, you deceivers. Were you there when the plan? For one, there was no planning of 9/11 from any of these people, because there's no way that 19 hijackers could have pulled this off. It had to be an inside job. Why? Well, the way the buildings come down, building number 7 coming down, it wasn't even touched by an airplane. The fact that engineers say that it's definitely a controlled demolition. The fact that one of the major demolition companies that bring down these types of buildings was also hired to do the cleanup, which is quite interesting. That a demolition company was hired to do the cleanup. There's all kind of cleanup companies out there. Why would they hire a demolition company to do the cleanup? Would it be to hide the evidence? Probably so. The other thing is that President Bush, his son-in-law, or his son or his son-in-law, one of those, son or son-in-law, was actually head of security for the Twin Towers when the attacks happened. So, if there was a government conspiracy, who better to allow people into the building to implement their security? Implement their agenda and their plot and their plan to use this what's it called, a false flag pretense, false flag. Yeah, it's called a false flag pretense, but use this false flag agenda to make it appear that Muslims brought down these twin towers, when in fact, wait a minute, again, President Bush has family members that were the head of security for the twin towers. That's interesting. It should be interesting to anyone who's ever heard this nonsensical story about these 19 hijackers. Um, but also, one of the top demolition companies in the country, in the world rather, that brings down these buildings and these controlled demolitions is hired to do the cleanup. Again, why would they hire a demolition company to do the cleanup? Now, I understand they would do the cleanup if they, in fact, did the demolition, right? I mean, that's obvious. If they were in control, hired to bring a building down, then of course they would also reap the reward of the cleanup for it. They'd be paid for the cleanup. So that makes sense. So when you piece, and the fact that through all this time, these 2 decades later, they still don't want to release all the information that they have about 9/11. Why? Because they're the one that manufactured it, and they know that they conspired. And there's just, anyways, I'll get off into all that. So it says Biden called again al-Zawahiri the deputy of terrorist mastermind Osama bin Laden, who was quote unquote deeply involved in the planning of 9/11. How do you know that? And the deaths of 2,977 people in those attacks. May Allah bring severe justice to whoever is responsible for the deaths that occurred on 9/11. But I somehow don't believe that it was Muslims. I somehow don't believe that it was Muslims. As a matter of fact, I will never believe that it was Muslims. Not because I don't think, that I think that Muslims uh, aren't capable of doing wrong. We're all, every human being is capable of doing wrong. But Muslims who would be aware of the fact that you cannot kill people unjustly. You cannot kill innocent people unjustly. Muslims who are aware that you are not supposed to be consuming alcohol or running around with strippers, as these people were known to have been doing, these so-called Muslims were known to have been doing. That's the story. That's what the government told the story, that they knew that they were in strip clubs and so forth, consuming alcohol the night before the attacks, the night before 9/11, right? On the 10th, obviously. And so they're going on this Islamic jihad the next day. They're going to meet their maker. They're going to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the night before the so-called Muslim attack against America, they're consorting with strippers and consuming alcohol at the club. And with all the rubble and the debris, they find a passport for one of the main character involved. How many main characters are there, by the way? Everyone's the head of this and the head of that. Every time they kill somebody, they were the head of this and the head of that. Come on. So it's not funny. These people are dying. So I'm not making mockery of people dying. It says the terrorist leader's presence in Afghanistan comes after the Biden administration's botched withdrawal and evacuation left the Middle Eastern nation in the hands of the Taliban, a militant group that the Biden White House previously described as quote unquote businesslike and professional. Really? Okay. So it says Taliban members took action to conceal al-Zawahiri's presence from the safe house in Kabul after his death, including quickly relocating his family members and emptying the safe house, a senior administration official said. Well, this last paragraph is absurd and ridiculous. It says Taliban members took action to conceal al-Zawahiri's presence from the safe house. In Kabul after his death, including quickly relocating his family members and emptying the safe house. It didn't destroy the bombs. You launched 2 missiles at the safe house, and it didn't destroy the safe house. It didn't kill everyone in it. It just killed him. What kind of bombs were these? But what is it? It says they took action to conceal al-Zawahiri's presence. How do you know? How do y'all know what they did, man? And what does that mean? What exactly does that mean? That they took action to conceal al-Zawahiri's presence. What do you mean by that? What did they do? How do you know that they did it? Or are you just making up a story? Because it certainly draws people's attention. What's the headline? Oh, matter of fact, it's on American Military News. That's the website that's running it. Running this article. Who wrote it? Liz George. Yeah. Released today. As a matter of fact, this article came out today. The U.S. releases global terrorist attack warnings to Americans. Holy moly. They're coming at us again. Man, come on, man. Get out of here with this nonsense. How do you know what the Taliban supposedly did? How would you know what they did to conceal al-Zawahiri's presence? What do you mean by that? What? You launched 2 bombs to kill him at the safe house. Apparently, there must have been other people there, according to this last paragraph. But how would you conceal his presence? What did they do? His body would have been destroyed by these bombs, I'm sure. Would have been burnt up, would have been dismembered. What do you mean Taliban members took action to conceal his presence? What? From the safe house in Kabul after his death. How did they conceal this dead man's presence after his death? What did they do? They get a broom and a dustpan and scrape up his body parts? I'm not making fun of it. But what do you mean by this? No, this final paragraph here is to make the mind think for the certain individuals, to make them think that, oh no, so the Taliban is still in action, even though they killed al-Zawahiri. The Taliban members got together and they're still in action. They got his family members. They're relocating them, and they emptied the safe house, and they're still they still have they're still in action. Taliban members took action. Yeah. Man, get out of here with this nonsense, man. So, I don't know if anyone's even heard me. I wasn't watching the screen here on StreamYard on the platform because I was reading, kind of getting into my own world here, and I've been having connection issues with this at this hotel. So I don't know if I cut out here or there. If I did, I do apologize. But if you've been listening, you'd like to come and join the conversation, you feel free to do so. I'm going to post the link. I see Brother C.L. Edwards watching. Matter of fact, tune into his channel and subscribe to his channel, C.L. Edwards. He is a member of the Consider This TV network, as well as Coventry Faith Foundation and Examine the Truth. Not Examine the Truth. Why did I say that? What's Brother? I can't remember everyone's channels right now, but I'll get to it in a second. I do apologize, but Brother Jamal's channel. What is Brother Jamal's channel? I can't think of it right now. But anyways, neither here nor there. I guess I'm getting old. But if you'd like to join the panel, I'm going to put on here, join the panel, and you can come and join the panel by clicking on this link that I'm posting right now. And I'd like to say assalamu alaikum and walaikum salam to everyone in the chat who sent me salams and so forth that I did not see initially. If you'd like to join the panel, and people of the book, Brother Jamal's channel is People of the Book. Alhamdulillah. Brother Jamal, please forgive me for forgetting the name of your channel. I've just been a long day, and I didn't remember the name of your channel. But anyway, subscribe to all the channels with the Consider This TV network. C.L. Edwards, People of the Book, Coventry Faith Foundation, and the others as well, inshallah, God willing. Make sure you hit subscribe, like, and share here as well. Let me show y'all something real quick. Bear with me 1 second. Before I do, I'm going to bear with me 1 second. Let me pull this down. Okay, so I would like to ask everyone a quick question. Would you like a free book? A totally free book. Let me show you which book. All right. This book right here. Let me show this one. Would you like a free book? Completely free. If you would like a free book, bear with me. Okay, I'm back. If you would like a free book, my new book is going to be published on September the 5th, inshallah, God willing. Your Right to Self-Identify, My Right to Disagree. It's dealing with the transgender issue. All you need to do, you can join the book launch team, and that will get you a free copy of the book. And you can become a member of the book launch team by sending me an email at info@kennybomer.com. And if you do that, I will send you a free copy of this book right here. You see a band going across this top right here. This is actually the author proof copy for me to look through, make sure the print is in good order and there's no flaws and so forth, or anything I want to change. And so, anyway, this one's not a for sale copy, but the book will be published on September the 5th, inshallah, God willing. And if you become a member of the book launch team, I will send you a free copy of this book. If you send me an email at info@kennybomer.com, I will tell you more about that. If you're a God-fearing person and you don't believe that a human being can change into something else, a man can't change into a woman, and a woman certainly can't change into a man either. If you believe that, and you believe that the creation that we were made to be is only determined by our God, our Creator, and you believe in that truth, then I encourage you to help support this endeavor and this book and so forth. And it's not about money or anything like that. I could care less about the money. It's all for the day of judgment. And I, encourage you to do your part in whatever capacity that you can to fight the falsehoods of the world. And so if you'd like a free copy of that book, just email me at info@kennybomer.com. So I'm going to wait a few minutes. Let me see if Brother CEO Edwards, I'm not sure if you're still there, but if you'd like to come to the panel, feel free to do so. Or anyone else, if you're a Christian or atheist or whatever, you'd like to come and have a discussion, feel free to do so. You can click on the link that I just posted in the chat a little bit ago, a few minutes ago. And I will wait here to see if someone comes to the panel or not. So you used to, let me fix this real quick. So used to, we would have a lot of people on the panel, and we probably still would if I was doing more shows and so forth. But I've been extremely busy. I really have. I was in Jerusalem for a couple of months at the beginning of the year, and I've had 3 inspection contracts to fulfill. I'm on one now, so I'm actually out of town. I'm not at home, and so just been extremely busy. Been getting the book ready, and busy. And so it's hard for me to do live streams as of late. But inshallah, once things slow down, we'll start doing more shows and so forth. I do encourage people to watch the previous debate that I had with Clifford Dunn on who wrote the Quran, Allah or Satan, the devil. I mean, think about it. I don't even get into that. But anyways, So I went ahead and took that debate because initially I asked him would he like to have a live discussion about the topic, because he has seen something he'd said on social media. And I was like, okay, all right, maybe you'd like to have a live discussion about that. He started talking like a debate scenario. So I said, are you suggesting that we debate the topic? And he said, sure, why not? I said, are you sure you want to do that? So it wasn't a debate that I had to spend a lot of time preparing for, because obviously, it's just far-fetched to claim that the Quran is the word of Satan. I mean, it's ridiculous. Anyways, but I encourage people to watch that debate. It was an interesting debate, nevertheless. Okay, so A.K. Manning asked a question earlier. I didn't see it until just now. He says, let's say that you were right. There's A.K. Manning right there. Let's bring him on. Let him ask the question. A.K. Manning.
What's up? I'm not going to look at the screen.
Hey, listen, you have to, if you're listening on YouTube, you got to put YouTube on mute. Otherwise, it's going to keep get feedback. Okay, so A.K. Manning, so make sure that you don't have say something.
You might have to cut me off because I can't tell what you're saying. I thought I'd give it a try.
No, it's working. We're just getting the feedback when I speak.
Oh, okay.
But what I was saying is,
okay, so I have a question, and it's going to be confrontational.
Hold on one second. If you're watching via YouTube,
I think I heard you say hold on a second, so I'm holding.
Yeah. So if you're watching YouTube, make sure you turn YouTube on mute. Put YouTube on mute.
I can't tell what you're saying, bro. I thought I'd give it a try. Sorry, man.
Well, try to. Yeah, okay. Brother Abi Yazid, assalamu alaikum, brother. How are you?
Wa alaikum salam. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, I'm doing fine, doing just fine. Yeah, I was curious as to what he wanted to ask, but it's too much.
I think I know what he
feedback.
was going to ask because he asked it in the chat. But um,
Yeah.
yeah, what you got here, in my opinion, what you got here is a case of Wag the Dog. It was actually a movie back in the 80s called Wag the Dog, and it was about like a guy in the government and a guy who worked in media getting together to create a fake story to distract the public away from a sex scandal that was happening in government.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so it's kind of coined as a catchphrase, "Wag the dog," to keep the public distracted. And think about it. You haven't heard any. When is the last time you heard anything about Al Qaeda?
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything about it. I haven't.
Yeah.
When's the last time you seen a story about Al Qaeda in mainstream news or anything like that?
Exactly, brother.
I haven't heard anything about it.
When I seen the headline, what you said is exactly what went through my mind. I promise you, Allah knows best. That when I seen the headline, I literally thought, well, there they go again. They're distracting us from something. That's literally what.
Okay, yeah. I mean, look at Biden. Biden is, I mean, he's in big trouble. He's in a failed presidency.
Yeah.
Now, technically, a recession is supposed to be, the definition of a recession is anytime the U.S. economy contracts 2 quarters in a row, something like that. Two reports, economic reports they come out with in a row. That's already happened.
Yeah.
So from the beginning of this year to now, the U.S. economy, the GDP, gross national product, has went down, contracted twice in a row. So that, by definition, is a recession. But Biden has already come out as of last week saying there's not a recession.
Yeah.
The people who run the centralized banks, they've come out and said there's not a recession. CEOs of companies are coming out and saying there's not a recession. So the last couple of weeks they've been beating this drum that we're really not in a recession. Also, I was just seeing a story today, which is funny. Biden went over to Saudi Arabia to speak to Saudi Arabia to get the OPEC member nations to increase their output of oil. And they didn't agree to do it. So now oil is getting ready to go back up, which means so the gas has been going down lately. Gas is getting ready to most likely go back up, unless Biden make some presidential order to try to keep it down or release the strategic oil reserves back into the economy. So the economy is doing real bad. And Biden hasn't done anything, or he hasn't been able to do anything to try to get it under control. That makes him, they're talking about him being one of the worst presidents since the 70s. We've got rampant, all types of people are being put out of their houses. People can't afford rent. The job market in certain sectors, the job market has contracted and not doing well. So with all that, what do? Yeah. You have to keep the public away from thinking, because if the majority of the public begins to believe that we are in a recession, we're going to be in a recession. So you gotta pull out all the stops to keep the public to distract them away from the economy and the potential of a recession. Why not pull out Al Qaeda out of the blue?
Yeah, it's certainly a distraction. And what do they do exactly? What I mentioned in the book, and why I use the subtitle "Disproving the Patriots of Propaganda," because it's a play on the patriots, right? It's for one, we have an election year coming up on top of what you're mentioning. It's all about the election. Everything that you've mentioned, as a matter of fact, is all about being reelected and the trouble that Biden has found himself to be in.
Well, that's another aspect of
presidency. And so what do? You play on the prejudices of the patriots of the world who have this negative mentality against Muslims and Islam and so forth, and distract them from the economic situation by, throwing this. I mean, look, global terrorist attack warnings to America. I mean, get out of here with this nonsense, man. I mean, it's just complete utter foolishness. How would they know it's global? You're spending all your time and money. For one, if you are spending all your time and your money finding out what Muslim groups are doing, small Muslim groups at that, you're spending all these vast amounts of money to do all this, scheming and spying or whatever you're doing. Listen, there's your problem right there. Economically, you're spending too much money on nonsense instead of funneling it back into the American people, and just wasting all this money on the military and all this nonsense when it boils down to it. And it's just tactics, and they're playing on the patriotism of the people. They know exactly what to do, when to do it, when times get rough, when things get rocky. Let's go back to the old propaganda, because the old propaganda always works.
Well, that's another aspect of all this also. With Russia is not backing down to Biden either.
Yeah.
The economic warfare that he's been trying to wage against Russia isn't working. Putin doesn't care about his threats. China, they don't care. China just, I think, was Nancy Pelosi. She just went over to what is it? Is it
Taiwan?
Taiwan? Yeah. And China was majorly upset about that. They flew fighter jets over that country while Nancy Pelosi was there, and they're making kind of threats like they might invade, since they saw Russia invaded, and they're basically getting away with it. So again, Biden is like losing all types, and like you said earlier, it's almost like we have a new mass shooting every 2 weeks. They haven't been able to stop that. They haven't been able to do anything with that. There's rampant gun violence throughout the cities. Pick a major city, is rampant gun violence. They haven't been able to do anything about that. So there's all types of fires burning. There's all types of problems going on. They can't do anything about. So why not pull out the terrorist card and get people afraid that Al Qaeda is hiding out? Like Al Qaeda is everywhere in the globe. You might go if you go down to Mexico, Al Qaeda might be there.
All over the globe.
If you go to Canada, Al Qaeda might just be there and get you.
Yeah, worldwide. I mean, it's U.S. releases global terrorist attack warning to Americans. Get out of here, man. Global? Come on, get out of here. How would you know, man? What do you mean? What do you mean by global? I mean, what do you mean? Please explain this. I swear I would like to ask this nonsense. I would like to ask these people who write these articles and these politicians, what do you mean by that? Global.
Yeah, and today,
how do you know? Where's your proof?
Today is the day. First of all, what happened in the last 2 days? Number one, we just had the midterms, and even though they've been having these a lot of Trump's endorsed candidates did pretty good across the nation. I know here in Michigan, where I'm at, one of the camps, Trump's endorsed Republican nominees for the governorship. She won the election, and she's going to go up against Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who's a Democrat who's already in office. So that's kind of bad news. It's bad news for the Democrats. It's bad news. They still haven't been able to get rid of Trump. He keeps hanging around, and the economy is doing bad. Russia and China are acting rogue. They're not afraid of America any longer. Like I put one of the comments I put in, America BRICS, which is the economic cooperation between, what is it, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. That represents a large part of the global economy, and they're trying to make moves to neutralize America and neutralize Western Europe, so the American dollar isn't dominant in the global economy anymore. Biden has really, my Biden himself, but the America, the government of America, not the everyday people like me and you, or the people who may be listening, whether they're Muslim or Christian or an atheist, but the government has a lot of problems. So I would be suspicious at best when you hear, all this talk about, oh, we killed one of the leaders of. How many leaders of Al Qaeda are they?
No, I mean, my goodness, man. That's what I was saying earlier. Everyone's a leader. Everyone's got, a leader of this and a leader of that. Get out of here, man. Come on.
I mean,
Enough already,
they've killed a lot. They've killed so many leaders of Al Qaeda. They've killed so many leaders of ISIS, and they've killed people and turned around and killed them all over again.
No,
And certain individuals they've killed multiple times.
That's ridiculous, man.
They keep coming back alive like zombies.
The thing is, what's sad is that there's people out there who just are so gullible and naive that they fall for it, And I don't want to be racist against my own people or nothing like that. But I can see the faces of some of these people in my mind, man. These certain groups of people who are just so out of touch with reality, and when it boils down to having culture and being being worldly in the sense that you do more than just walk into a Mexican restaurant, but you actually have Mexican friends, by example. But these certain groups of people that are prone to these patriotic followings. It's almost like a religion in a sense, in that they prey upon the patriotism, these American flag. And listen, hey, I'm proud to be an American and so forth, but I'm going to fly a American flag off the tailgate of my truck, and that type of mentality. These types of characters, that fly their flag.
You notice how a lot of those people are so they contradict themselves so much.
Yeah.
Because on one hand, they say you can't trust the federal government. We don't want big government. We don't want to, we don't want a particular president. If the president happens to be Democrat, we don't want that president, all in our business. They don't want big government. They don't want social programs for people. You got to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. But then again, they like big government when it comes to militarism. They like big government when it comes to the CIA, when it comes to the NSA, when it comes to spying, when it comes to spending money on chasing terrorists and dropping $1 million bombs on $10 huts in the middle of Afghanistan. Yeah. They're okay with that type of big government. They're okay with all that big government spending. It's their own politics doesn't even make logical sense. It doesn't add up. It's not congruent.
No, it's
and all that stuff about that happened after 9/11, when they formed Homeland Security, when they passed all those different laws. All it ended up doing was spying on Americans. Yeah. All it is so everything you do now is being collected and documented, because you're walking around with a cell phone in your hand. Your movements, who you talk with, what you do, what websites you go to, your financial transactions, all of that is being collected and warehoused and analyzed by algorithms. Absolutely. But they told you that was because of 9/11.
Yeah. No, that's right, man. That's why I tell people in the book, I tell them it's population control. And that some people just can't wrap their minds around what I'm talking about that. I encourage people to read the theories of Yaqub regarding population control and how they use propaganda and so forth to move the masses in, through jargon, through headlines, through rhetoric, to persuade and move the masses from one direction to another in a social, for a social setting, as far as not physically, but sometimes physically, as a matter of fact. It does happen physically as well, but they get the mentality, the social mentality to drift from one approximation to another, to achieve their agendas. And it's true. It really happens, and they use headlines to do it. I mean, when I look at this, as soon as I seen this nonsense, and again, it's on American Military News website, right? And I'm not a member of the American military. I don't even remember where I seen this. It just popped up somewhere. I was like, let me see. As soon as I seen the headline, U.S. releases global terrorist attack warning to Americans. Of course, who are they going to talk about? Of course, you don't see a headline like this without Islam being in the center of it. Just you don't. I mean, it's just ongoing. We've been dealing with it for decades upon decades at this point. U.S. releases global terrorist attack warning to Americans. Global? So not only you're a threat at home, you can't even leave the house, and the Muslims are coming to get you. They're going to track you down wherever you are.
Yeah, it's all a play. When I watch, I don't watch the news a lot, but when I sit down and watch the 11 o'clock news, I see people getting killed, houses being broken into, home invasions, women being raped, people dying from overdoses because of other Americans.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to get, God forbid that anyone gets killed, but if most likely if you're going to get killed, 99.99%, you're going to get killed by another American who believes exactly the same religion you believe in.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's why I asked the question: has any Muslim or group of Muslims ever, if you're a non-Muslim out there, have they ever come to try to oppress you in any way or cause you any harm or try to force you to accept Islam or threaten your life? No. Be honest. No, it hasn't happened. But the government and these media people, they sure try to make you think it's going to happen, and the time is at hand. And they've been,
Yeah, and that's another thing, and a lot of people like to, I'm not going to jump on this too much, but I'm going to say something real quickly. We like to pretend that there's no racial element to this.
oh yeah,
And if you were to be honest with yourself, it's a racial element because this ain't the 40s and the 50s where you could just, get on television or movies and call people racial slurs at will.
yeah,
So you have to be more smart about it. You have to be more sly about it. So what we've done in modern times in the media is that we have certain words that we apply to certain people,
yes sir,
certain racial groups, and we 9 times out of 10 only apply it to that racial group. We don't apply it to anyone else, especially Caucasians,
yeah,
like the word terrorist, like you were saying earlier.
yeah,
So when people think of, so because of the media, when people hear the word terrorist, an image instantly pops into their mind. They see a guy with a beard and a turban, and
yeah,
he has maybe olive or brown skin, or maybe he's even darker than that, and he has garments of the East,
yeah,
and you don't think of the Unabomber.
yeah,
You don't think of the mass shooter in Buffalo, New York. You
yeah,
don't think of the guy that young Mexican boy down in Uvalde, Texas. You don't think of these people. But terrorism, by definition, is the threat or the use of violence for political aims and gains.
yeah,
So all of these mass shootings that have happened this year and over the few years, all these people who've written manifestos. If you write a manifesto and you have political aims in your manifesto, I'm going to use violence. I'm going to use severe violence for these political aims. By definition, that is terrorism.
that's
But
right.
yet you still see the media hesitant at best to use the word terrorism for these individuals
Yeah, I can't,
because
I
they
can't
because
understand
we all
terrorism.
know, if we will be truthful, we will all know, because terrorist is has racial overtones to it, the way it's being used for the last few decades.
Yes, sir. That's right. That's right. And that's why I said earlier that I don't want to seem as I'm racist against my own race of people, but I mean, come on. Uh, sure, there's a lot of white people up there in the government that are you know, I mean, there's different races up there as well, but man, there's a lot of white people up there, and uh,
Yeah. If we're gonna be real honest, if we're gonna be dead honest with ourselves, if you go into any organization, whether it's for-profit organization or non-profit organization in America, in Britain, in France, in Spain, in Italy, all across Europe, across the West, yeah, you might see a few diverse faces, but the people who are in charge and making the decisions are Caucasians, specifically Caucasian males. Can you say that's not a factual statement? Of course, it's a factual statement.
That's right.
So, who's making the decisions to use the word, how and when to use the word terrorist, and who to apply it to?
Yeah.
You know who is doing it.
That's right. It's the same old thing. That's why I say in the new book, the more things change, the more they stay the same. I didn't come up with the slogan, but that saying, but it's one that fits in so many areas that
And when the term terrorist and terrorism was put all out through mass media because of these large corporations, whereas Viacom, Disney, or whatever, the whoever owns Fox, whoever owns CNN, and we know who runs and owns and controls these entities. Let's be real. When they put these images and these words out into the public, who in the public grabbed a hold onto these images and words, and who got on the internet and started calling people by these names and words and epithets? Who on the internet started speaking and obsessing for the last decade about terrorists and how terrorists are coming, and how these Muslims are terrorists, and they're coming to change our country and change our, how they always say, our country, our culture, our real life. Who talks like that?
Yeah.
So again, be honest with yourself.
That's right.
Especially if you claim to believe in God, because a lot of people are hypocrites. You say you believe in God, but look at the way. But where does your allegiance really lie?
Yeah. That's right. I just posted the link in the chat again to join the panel. AK Manning, if you're listening right now, what I was saying earlier is that we were getting feedback because you were probably on the StreamYard platform as well as listening through YouTube, and we're getting feedback. So if you want to come back, you have to X out of YouTube or make sure you put it on mute and then come back. So I would try again, X out of YouTube, click on the same link, and come back and join the panel, and just speak to us through the panel, and don't try to listen through YouTube. That's where the problem was. I was trying to let you know what the issue was. But I posted the link if you'd like to come to the panel and discuss this with myself and Brother Abiyazid C.L. Edwards for a few minutes. We'll wait a few minutes. No, we didn't withhold the racism. The racism is real. So come back, click on the link, AK Manning, and come back and have a discussion. But you, once again, put YouTube on mute or X out of it, and then join the panel. And we'll have a discussion. But if you're someone else who would like to come join the panel and have a discussion about this topic or whatever else, feel free to click on the link.
I mean, that's another cleverness is, you notice anytime these organizations, and there's organizations ran by who, speaking to an audience that is majority of who, and when they're tossing around these terms and they're painting with a broad brush whole entire populations of people, don't say it. You better not claim that that's racism, because if you claim that's racism, all of a sudden now it's reverse racism. How dare you call me racist for behaving racist? And it's all these little mind games and tricks, but everybody doesn't fall for these mind games.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, so they got something up their sleeve that they're planning. They're trying to distract from. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. With the election year coming, the midterms, having passed, and what they're going to have to try to get some of the Trump audience. It's going to be hard to do that, but there's some people out there. Obviously, there's Democrats versus Republicans, but the point being is that they still have to try to get those who are have that American pride and patriotic mind state whenever, there's conflict. It's always us over here against them over
But
there. And
it's both sides because
it
we
is.
see is Biden is the one who's saying this at the moment.
Yeah.
So Biden's wing of the Democrat Party, they're just as much, they, even though they may not use the same rhetoric, their actions are exactly the same.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. And so, these types of headlines are going to still try to, in a time of war, the American people, these patriots, they come together and you kind of cross um, dividing lines whenever either they're in times of war or whenever they feel like they're fighting against a certain enemy. So it's a prime time to go ahead and start instilling this type of mentality into the people once again, as we're approaching the election year, so that some of these people cross over and I know it's just a part of the process where they're trying to get the people that hold this mentality, that have this racist mentality, that have this Islamophobic mentality, that will bite into these ideas that they see in these headlines, and now they have a common enemy for a common cause, and we have our God over here versus their God over there, and those brown people over there, and so forth, and and so there's the patriotism, and um, you know,
Yeah, so I mean, and it's well documented that the federal government has a issue of creating its own enemies. So it's been documented how the government has airdropped ammunition, weapons, supposedly to allies, and then all of a sudden ISIS gets it, you know,
yeah,
or Al Qaeda gets it. And even here in America, if you want to go back into the 80s, there was a gentleman, a Caucasian gentleman, who burst the story wide open, who was from California, showing how the Iran Contra scandal and the drug trade, how CIA assets were selling drugs from Colombia, bringing them into the inner cities of America, and people in the government, at best, they turned a blind eye and allowed it to happen. At worst, some people would say they were directly involved in it. So they fueled the whole crack era.
yeah,
And Biden, who's in office right now, who wrote the crime bill, who's famously said that anyone caught possessing 1 rock of cocaine should do a minimum of 5 years in prison. Even though
yeah.
and that's another thing they didn't show in the news. His son, I don't know if you saw that video of his son on camera smoking crack.
What? No, I didn't see that. Wow.
Yeah, go look that up. Go look up Hunter Biden. A video just came out last month. He's on video with prostitutes, naked in the bed, smoking crack, weighing cocaine up on a triple beam scale.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't hear
And
about
his
that.
father is the man that said if you get caught with a rock of cocaine, you should do 5 years in prison.
Wow. Yeah, I had no clue about that. I haven't heard about that. Hunter
And
Biden.
they pretend like that wasn't racialized. It's just law and order. Okay. You don't look at what people say, you look at what people do. You look at the actions and the consequences of the actions and the repercussions of the actions. You don't look at what people say.
Crazy. Hunter Biden, huh? My goodness gracious. Yeah, I haven't heard that one. That's
Oh
a
yeah.
new one on me.
For some reason that didn't get on the national news.
Yeah.
But like I said, Biden he has a failed presidency, and it just, I hope not. It wouldn't. I hope he wouldn't be dumb enough to allow some type of attack to take place in America to distract people even more.
A.K. Manning said that Kenny brought up race 3 times. Yes, I did, because I happen to be Caucasian, and I happen to know how Caucasian people function in this world and what they say behind closed doors, and I'm man enough to say it. I mean, racism is still real and prevalent, and it's the a driving force behind a lot of this. Uh, that's just a fact. It's just a fact. Racism hasn't gone anywhere. It's still there. You know. So I don't know. Yeah, he always has an issue with me making claims that you know that a lot of this Islamophobia and so forth is driven by racism, but it's just the truth, man. It's the truth. So hey, look, AK Manning, click on the link. Be here a few more minutes. It's time for McGrib here. It's time to pray here shortly in the next few minutes. And so I'm not sure how long we'll be on, but if you'd like to try to come to the panel, do so in the next few minutes. Inshallah, click on the link that I posted already in the chat. I'll do it again for everyone's convenience. But if you come to the panel, you have to make sure that you're not listening somewhere else because we'll get feedback. So you can't watch on YouTube and be on the panel talking at the same time. Yes, AK Manning, let's come to the panel once again and let's talk about the racist elements that goes along with this Islamophobia. So I posted the link in the chat. Feel free to come and have a discussion. I don't see how anyone could not see the racism involved in all this. It's like.
But see, that's been the underhanded thing for eons at this point. It's been going on for the last 500 years.
Yeah,
So when Britain colonized various nations, even India, it wasn't about race. It was about how backwards the Indians were, and we were bringing civilization to them. It's always some excuse. When the American colonial force spread from the east coast of America across America to the west coast, taking and devouring land from the various Native Americans, it wasn't about it. It had nothing to do with racism. When you took Texas from the Mexicans, it had nothing to do. There was no racist element involved in that. That was just good versus evil, and we're always good. We're the always good, and it just so happens whoever isn't us is always evil.
Brother, everyone else is always savages, right? They need to be tamed. They need to be indoctrinated and they need to be trained to live.
And yes, and the teaching and the civilization and the taming always involves severe violence, murder, the theft of land, the occupation, colonialism, and slavery.
Yeah, I mean, come on, man. To deny it is like I don't see how someone can deny it on any level. I mean, just look at history speaks for itself, man. It was, like the brother mentioning the European settlers coming over here and taking over the land of the natives. Do you really don't think that race had anything to do with that? Of course it did.
And if it was yesterday, it's today.
Enslaved and so forth. Did race have anything to do with at least that?
What the United States has been doing in the Middle East, for the so-called Middle East, for the last 2 decades. Oh, that's again. Here we go again. That has nothing to do. That has no racial element to it. Yeah. That's just good versus evil. That's just the civilized versus the uncivilized.
Yeah.
We were bringing democracy. We spent $3 trillion in Afghanistan and couldn't bring democracy. Just somehow failed to establish democracy.
All right, so AK Manning's on the panel. Listen, Alan, you have to turn off any other source of listening to the show. X out of YouTube completely, because otherwise we'll get feedback.
I can't guarantee that it's going to work. I've got all other apps off. YouTube is closed.
Okay.
But I'm only hearing you through my phone, and the sound is very low, so I'm still having trouble hearing you. Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, glad to hear it. So, from the beginning of the stream, wow, gosh, there's like 2 or 3 or 4 things I want to bring up. But the one that's on my mind the most right now is even before your guest started talking about race, you were talking about race over and over and over again. And I'm wondering why race is a central topic on your mind.
Well, just to defend Kenny. Race has not been the central topic of this video. Maybe all you heard was the racial aspect of it.
Okay, well, no, yeah, I should correct what I've said, and thank you for drawing attention to that. I don't mean that it's the primary subject, but it's a subject that has been returned to
more than a
times
number of times
before you came on, and then
because race plays a role in the subject.
Right. And so the question I'm addressing to Kenny, although I do thank you for contributing to the answer, but the question I'm addressing to Kenny is, Kenny, why does race keep coming up?
I think Kenny may be frozen.
Oh, okay.
So until Kenny comes back, you don't think race plays any type of role in the subject?
Can y'all hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so let me answer this question just real quick, because race is the driving element behind this. As we mentioned earlier, when these white kids are going in, these white males are shooting up masses of people over and over and over and over and over again. We never hear terrorism at all. We never hear the word terrorism. No, we never hear that. We never hear anything about their religion. But lo and behold, every time they get a chance, they are putting a mark against Islam, putting a mark against Muslims who primarily are mostly dark-skinned people throughout the world when it boils down to it, or that's how they're perceived, although there's people of all races are Muslims, obviously. But racism has a huge part to play in all of this. Anytime there is look at the wars that Americans fought and been a part of. It's always always been driven by some type of a has a racial connotation to it in some way, in some form or fashion. It just always does. I don't see how you can't see the racism in it, to be quite honest. Maybe I'll let you. Go ahead.
Can I interject a little bit?
Oh, it appears that you've unmuted my mic. Does that mean I'm free to speak?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Okay. So you made a statement that you don't see how it is that I can't see a racial component. And I haven't made any claim like that. I've never said that I can't see a racial component. But the article that you came on talking about makes no mention of race. And your guest, who appears in that corner of the screen, says, okay, you can see a connotation of race in the word terrorist. I personally disagree with that, but I can see where he's coming from. He makes a reasonable point. So we have, at minimum, zero mention of race in the article. At most, a connotation, and yet 3, 4, 5 times you're overtly bringing race into it. And so I'm wondering why it's a prevalent thing for you rather than something that is either non-existent or a subtle connotation.
So now we have the reverse racism argument. So that we have this is a prominent talking point. That anytime the race or issues of race are mentioned, certain individuals become highly triggered, and they become highly agitated. Their race is being spoken about, and especially if when it's spoken about of white racism or white supremacy. So anytime that's mentioned, this type of triggering comes forward. Why are you talking about this? Why are you mentioning this? Because this show the argument itself leads to the validation of the conversation. There is a attitude in this world and in this country that you can speak about certain people however you would like to speak about them, but you can't speak about this other group of people because these people are a protected class of people. And that's the part of the argument of the word racism. See, the media, again, was widely tossing around the word racism in the news. The concept of racism was widely used as a storyline for countless movies that were produced by Hollywood. So these corporations and people, let's be honest, as I said earlier, the boards of directors and the CEOs and the COOs of majorities of these companies like Viacom and Disney aren't brown-skinned Muslim people. We know who these people are, but they put that out, and then the audience that consumed this material, because we know who the majority of the people are in the West. The majority of the people who consumed this material and who were okay with this material, we know who those people are. So it's become a stereotype, because, like I said earlier, you said the article doesn't blatantly say race because people don't do that anymore. This is in the 1940s, so only a small group of people are walking around with blatant racist rhetoric and blatant racist ideas. A lot of people crouch their racist concepts behind code words, and the word terrorist has become one of those code words. So the word terrorist can be applied to non-white people, non-Christian people at will in the media. But when there's talk of applying that to white people or white males who use violence for political aims, because that's the definition of terrorist, there's at best a hesitation. At worst, there's an outright triggering where people revolt against the very idea of using that word for that population. So we have to ask it. If you're a thinking person, you ask questions.
Yeah.
So we have to ask the question: why would that be?
Let me let him respond. He's wanting to say something over there.
Okay.
You've summarized that very well, as a matter of fact, much better than I did. Go ahead, Adam.
Hey there, I'm unmuted. Thank the Lord. So, Guy, I don't want to refer to you as the guy who interrupted me. May I have your name?
Well, I didn't interrupt you. We're having a conversation. Not a monologue.
I'm going to have to listen again then, because it appears that while I was mid-sentence, I don't know, I'll check the video. It felt like an interruption. Maybe I perceived it wrongly. But may I have your name, sir?
C.L. Edwards.
C.L. Edwards. Okay, thank you, sir. Yeah, the screen keeps saying my mic's muted, it's unmuted, so I don't know what's going on there.
Hey, Alan, listen, hold on one second. So I have to put you on mute back and forth because whenever we talk, we're getting feedback. We can hear it through your speakers or whatever. So every time I speak or he speaks, I have to put you on mute. So now I'm going to take you off mute again.
Okay,
go ahead.
Okay, gotcha. Mr. Edwards, I wanted to challenge you on something. You mentioned the idea that there are certain people that are triggered whenever the mention of race comes up. In my understanding of my question, I was simply asking the question. Internally, I didn't perceive myself as being triggered. So how do you make that judgment?
Well, I'm making that judgment because the very idea of Kenny mentioning white males triggered you.
You're stating that it triggered me.
Well, it became
that conclusion because I was
okay. If you're not triggered, you've been mentioning this in the comment section, and now you've come up twice and you've mentioned it. You're mentioning it again. You're not even talking about the central idea of the whole entire show. You wanted to come up here and talk about Kenny mentioning white men.
Okay, so you would characterize it as being triggered because it's a secondary issue.
Different word if that makes you feel better.
What?
You can use a different word if you would like to use a different word.
I'm not interested in the wording, except I like accurate wording. You know, if your wording is truthful,
it concerns you.
Didn't hear you while I was speaking. Say it again, please.
Yeah, okay. Would you say it concerns you?
Yeah, I'm concerned about truthfulness.
Okay.
Truthfully, I brought up a question that seems to me to be valid.
Okay. So it can. Okay. So you're not triggered. You're concerned about that.
Sorry, I was talking. I didn't hear you. Go ahead.
I was saying you're not triggered. You're concerned about Kenny mentioning white men.
I think it's unusual. I don't circulate around people who talk about race very much.
But that was my point.
Good, brother.
Thank you.
I'm having to anticipate.
If there's here, I want to learn it. I'm listening.
Yeah, because there's a lot of feedback on your end.
I'm having to anticipate when each of you are going to speak because if Alan's mic is off mute, we're hearing the feedback. But when I put him on mute, we don't hear the feedback. So,
AK, are you playing the show in the background?
Okay, I'm unmuted. Yeah, I principally agree with your position. I think the definition you gave of terrorism is appropriate. It's the use of violence for political ends, and that definition should be applied no matter what religion or skin color anybody is. Of course, a person can be a Muslim of any skin color, so I don't know why skin color is even relevant. But yeah, I'll say that there are people that I've been exposed to that hear the word terrorist and they think what you mentioned. They think of the person, dressed as if they're from Saudi Arabia, and I think that's a shame, right? Because terrorism is a specific, approach that people use, but it's not a people group. And so,
Alan, just real quickly, there's your answer right there. I mean, you said it yourself. When I see the word terrorist, I automatically know who they're going to be talking about, because the connotation to the word, as the brother mentioned earlier, is Muslims. And usually when that comes to mind, people envision dark-skinned people from the Middle East that are Muslims. And so, I mean, you said it yourself. But hey, let me ask you, are you listening to us through your speakers of the truck or via your phone?
So I'll answer your question, but yeah, I was saying what I said in support of what Mr. Edwards said earlier, because Mr. Edwards made that assertion. I was just agreeing with him that some people see it that way. I've only met one or two ever, but some people do make a racial association. To answer your question about how I'm listening, it's through the speaker on my phone. I mentioned that when we began the conversation.
Oh, I don't remember that. Okay. Well, again, so seeing the word terrorist, what bothers me, Alan, we've discussed this many times. I don't know why we're talking about it even again. But when domestic violence takes place here, when mass shootings take place here, we never hear about the person's religion. We never hear the word terrorist mentioned. But when it's a dark-skinned person, or when it's a person who is a Muslim, it's a different story. And
In fact, I'll go one further than that, Kenny.
yeah,
Because I monitor different Islamophobia channels, and I was involved in that whole entire. I was involved in that scene at one time, so I know what they talk about. In fact, among a large group of people, anytime there's an attempt to use the word terrorist or terrorism with a white individual, people will protest and say that that's wokeism or that's reverse racism. If you go on certain right-wing websites, you can see that in the comment section to this day. When the FBI came out a number of years back and said the greatest terrorist threat to the United States and of America was domestic terrorism from white nationalists, there was a triggering online from other white individuals who said that was reverse racism, that the FBI, the statistics were a lie, the statistics were wrong, that doesn't exist, that's not a real problem. The Democrats are just making that up to tear down, white culture and white males. And that rhetoric exists. In fact, I can take you on numerous different right-wing websites, and you can see that in the comment section. You can go on various white evangelical Christian YouTube channels, and you can see this rhetoric today. So it does exist. Yeah. It's not like when we say this, we're talking about something that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Are you presuming that I'm saying it doesn't exist? Because I've never said such a thing.
Well, maybe you can maybe you can explain. You can explain. Why did Kenny mentioning that? Why did that concern you so much?
Because I think people are too focused on race. It's a dumb thing to focus on. I wish nobody cared about race.
I wish no one cared about race either, as a black man. But the problem with the I don't see color argument is that racism actually exists. So that's like saying, I wish people wouldn't talk about cancer. I wish cancer didn't exist. That's a good thing to say. But saying I wish people wouldn't talk about cancer. If I'm a cancer patient, I don't want to hear that, because I want cancer to be treated.
I feel like you might be refuting a point that I'm not making.
Okay. Expound on your point.
Okay. I just simply believe, the difference between racism and cancer is racism is perpetuated socially. Cancer is perpetuated outside of our speech. And so the best way, if I wanted the whole world to become racist, let's say I'm a racist, a real serious racist, and I want everybody to be racist, I think the best way I could do it is to focus on race all the time.
Well, see that presumes that racism doesn't already exist and is not a problem. So it seems like the logic behind what you're saying is, if you keep mentioning, because Kenny didn't simply mention race, and I didn't simply mention race. I mentioned a racist notion, a racist mindset that affects this whole issue of Islamophobia. That like I just said, is real. I just gave you examples, and I said these are real, and you conceded they are real.
And brother, he said that I spoke about race. He said that I spoke about race 3 times before you came on. I don't remember speaking about race. So somehow he's saying you mentioned white males. Yeah, somehow he's mentioned what I've said and turned it into race. I don't know how.
So I wish people see. This is what I wish. I wish that people like yourself would get upset with every portrayal of a terrorist being a Muslim in every single movie and every single television show, as has been since the 70s. You know,
Like I do.
every Rambo movie, every Schwarzenegger movie, every television show, when they want to have a storyline about terrorism, who do they cast? What is the storyline? It's been 1,000 movies, 1,000 television shows, and as we know, it's called programming for a reason. Because when you see a certain image and you hear certain words over and over again, you get programmed. So actually, in a way, I agree with you, but I don't agree with you applying that to this show. You need to apply that to the whole of a society, so we can get rid of this racist problem.
Yeah, I missed much of what you said. As you can tell, I'm in a noisy environment, so I'll rewatch this later. Mr. Edwards, you and I probably agree more than we disagree, and so I'm not sure why I.
Because it sounds like you're implying that by mentioning white men, that's going to perpetuate. If we talk about white supremacy in any shape, form, or fashion, that's going to create more racism. And the thing that we should do is just never speak about it. And somehow, if we never speak about it, it'll go away.
Assume what I think, you can ask me. It seems like that would be a respectful way to conduct yourself.
I don't think he's analyzing what you have said.
You know, I mean, to be real respectful, to be totally respectful with you, you know, I don't consider myself the smartest cookie in the cookie jar, but I consider myself a little slick. And I see you as someone who's perpetually playing the victim in this conversation. Because no matter what we say, you claim that you're not triggered, but you sure enough act like you're triggered.
What? The victim of what?
Because you claim that you're not triggered, but every time you speak, you sound like you're triggered.
Are you talking about my tone? You don't like my tone?
Your tone and what you're saying. You seem like you keep seem to put forward this idea that Kenny mentioning white men, that's something bad, that's something wrong. Some of the things that I've said, you made that is something bad, it's something wrong. People need to stop mentioning race because that's something bad, that's something wrong. I don't understand. Maybe you need to. I don't know what goes on inside your mind, inside your heart. But I can only read your reaction as I'm having this conversation with you.
On top of that, Alan and I have had this discussion about religion and race dozens of times.
Yeah,
and he always.
If you really have a problem with racism, why do you only have a problem with the word white male being mentioned a couple of times? That seems to be the thing you're triggered about.
Before I answer, you've mischaracterized me a couple times. I feel like I need to correct that. You said that I say it's something bad and something wrong. I did not say that. It's untrue.
Oh, is this something good?
It was something that I neither characterized as good or bad. I was just asking why.
Okay, and it was explained to you why.
What?
It was explained to you why.
I'm sorry, if the sound is too quiet, I'll hear it. When I re-listen later, I'll hear it again. But I'm not sure, like, you say that it's good to discuss. Racism is real, we should discuss it. Okay.
In this particular topic,
it's part of the topic. Sir, please don't interrupt me, sir. So
I'm having a conversation with you.
So you say
we got to let him speak, brother. Otherwise, whenever you speak
let him speak. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Adam.
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
You say it's something that we should discuss. I respect that. So when I open the discussion by saying, "Why do you keep bringing up race?" Does that make me a bad guy?
I'm just wondering why is that concerning to you, but other aspects of racism aren't something you seem to be concerned about. You're not concerned about the central topic of the show, that President Biden, in the midst of a failed presidency and economic hard times, international hard times with China and Russia, all of a sudden pulls out the Al Qaeda card, and I killed one of the leaders of Al Qaeda. Same thing that Obama did.
So I didn't mention that because I agree with you on the premise that governmental leaders often bring up distracting narratives to take away from their own failures. I guess I could have just said the word, "Go, Mr. Edwards," you're right. But like the mention of race over and over again, if he was mentioning any race, if he said, "Oh, all these black people," over and over and over again, or even once, if he said, "Oh, the Mexicans, blah, blah, blah," repeatedly, or even once, I would have also asked the same question. Why do you bring up the fact that they're Mexican or black or Asian or whatever?
But
Because
did you hear
the
reasons?
I don't recall saying anything about white people over and over and over again.
Well, he's mentioning that you mentioned white men doing mass shootings or white men being terrorists.
Yeah,
you mentioned that 2 or 3 times.
That's
maybe
reality.
4 times.
Yeah, because their religion is not mentioned, and they're not called terrorists. They're not called terrorists because they're white. Let's be real. Their religion is not mentioned because they're white. That's a reality. If they were dark-skinned and if they were Muslims, their religion would be mentioned, and the mere fact that they're dark-skinned, their religion would be mentioned. It's racism.
And also, I would add that religion would be the central explanation for why they acted the way they acted.
And the thing is, to be honest, Alan, you're almost being racist, and I don't think you're a racist, but you're almost being racist in your approach, in that you're sidestepping the main issue, as the brothers pointed out 3 times now, about Muslims being targeted as the villains. Okay, Muslims who are stereotypically seen as being brown-skinned people from the Middle East. Okay, so you're sidestepping that whole issue to focus and defend the fact that white people have been called out or have not been labeled the way the dark-skinned people from the Middle East have been. So you're kind of being racist in the process, to be honest.
I would say he's being naive. I wouldn't go as far as saying racist.
Well,
I would say he's being naive.
But he's either being naive or he's because this is not the first discussion that we've had about race. He and I.
And I've seen the other discussions. So, like I said, so when I used the word triggered, and he became offended at the word. I'm not a trigger. How could you say I'm a trigger? It kind of seems like you're triggered. I'm just saying. It kind of seems like you're triggered.
You don't come and talk about this particular point if you're not triggered by that particular point. So the word triggered is not a bad thing. It just happens to be
you're not, because he said, well, he didn't. He just admitted that he didn't mention anything about the central topic of the show. That didn't trigger you.
No,
that didn't trigger you. Biden, coming out for political reasons using Al Qaeda doesn't trigger you. Muslims being labeled with the code word terrorist doesn't trigger you. The thing that you wanted to talk about,
don't you say anything about no white males.
White men. That's the thing you want to talk about.
How dare you?
You can say you're not claiming that's reverse racism, but it really sounds like you're saying it's reverse race. No, you're making the reverse racism argument.
Yeah, it almost listen, man, I'm red hair and freckle face, right? I mean, you can see I still have some signs of red hair, and I have freckles. I'm red hair, freckle. Well, I'm white as they get, man. And how dare this white guy say anything? How dare this white guy bring up race?
Well, your problem, Kenny, is you're woke. You're too woke.
Yeah, I guess.
You're woke. You're just too woke, Kenny.
Oh man,
you're on that wokeism.
Alan, I like Alan. He's my buddy, but we've had this discussion numerous times. He doesn't really believe that racism drives.
I mean, even the argument of people talk, if I was the devil, if I wanted to increase racism, I would keep talking about people's race. I mean, that's not an original argument. That's an old
if you don't
trope.
talk about it, it's going to go away.
That's a very old talking point and trope.
No, if you don't talk about it, it gets worse. As a matter of fact,
yes, just stop talking. Just don't. Kenny, stop mentioning the use of terrorism being applied to people of a particular race and not to another particular race. The way you get rid of that is by not talking about it.
It's like saying I walked out to the yard and stepped into some dog poop, and if I don't talk about the dog poop, it's not going to smell. I mean, it is. Somebody needs to tell you, hey, look, you got some.
And I hate, and again, this is why I say he's naive. I hate to break it to you, but racism is all around the globe.
Oh man, it's everywhere.
The racism. There was a time where 90% of the Muslims in the Muslim lands were under the control of the Western colonial powers. Over 90% of Muslim lands were occupied and colonized by the Western powers. And many of them, even though they've received some semblance of freedom, their economy and the assets of their country are still controlled by the Western powers.
Yeah,
we see that in Western Africa and North Africa, that the people are still speaking French, and the central currency is the French franc, and France has control over their central banks. So even though there may be Arabs and Black people at the head of the government, they bow down to the Western powers.
Yeah, brother, let's go back
and pay tribute. So I mean, global racism and beyond global racism, white supremacy still exists. Yeah. And when you and there's a problem in America when you even mention that or attempt to talk about. If you use the word white supremacy, it seems to be the same group of people, white men, who get triggered by that.
Yeah.
And say, why are you talking about that? Stop talking about that. It bothers me when you talk about that. It's racist when you talk about that.
Let's go back to him and see what he's got to say to respond.
During the time I was muted, the first half of the time, I think I was mischaracterized 3 or 4 times. I didn't have a chance to respond. I didn't take notes because I'm driving. I kind of feel like it's silly for me to continue with you guys because all you do is put words in my mouth and then mute me.
Alan, listen, we're not putting words in your mouth. What we're doing is analyzing. We're analyzing what you've said in this conversation and drawing our conclusion based on that. So we're not trying to categorize you or analyze you unjustly. We're taking what you have said and telling you what we think based on what you've said and what you've chosen to talk about. What small, minute version or topic within the main topic that you extracted to make your talking point. That's why we're saying what we're saying. We're not being unjust. We're just telling you why we're saying what we're saying. Go ahead.
If that's what's fun for you, if you enjoy just going ad hominem, not really addressing the point, calling something an old trope, even though it's a valid point, have fun. If you like picking on people, I enjoy it.
Alan, no one has said anything rude to you. We haven't said anything directly about you and accused you of anything. I said earlier that I think that you're being slightly racist. But I also clarified and said I don't believe that you're a racist, but you're being slightly racist by only wanting to talk about that one particular point. But we're not using ad hominem against you. No one's been disrespectful to you. Brother Abu Yazid, C.L. Edwards, I guess he lost his signal or something. He's not here now, but I'll go back to you.
Well, you often invite me to participate. I'd say I don't like the way I'm treated when I participate, so I still figured I'd give it a shot.
How are you? No one said anything.
Maybe I'm not hearing everything. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of background noise. It's entirely possible that you're being reasonable and fair, and I'm just missing some of what you're saying. So
Yeah.
It's neither here nor there. I've agreed with you on your central premise that political figures like to distract attention from their own failures. I agree with you on that. That's why I didn't mention it. You know, I agreed with Mr. Edwards on the vast failures of the Biden administration. So that's why I didn't mention it. I found it worth questioning that you brought race in several times, but now I've learned my lesson. You've successfully shut me up. I can't ask about that. So good job.
No. See, what you're doing is you're doing exactly what the brother said you were doing. You're playing the victim, and no one's treated you unjustly here. But again, we're pointing out the fact that out of the broader discussion, the only thing that you wanted to talk about was the fact that I mentioned race. And I mentioned race primarily because, and I'll say it again, because when these mass shootings happen in this country, and they're going to happen again, they never mention the word terrorism, and they never mention the religion. But the connotation to the word terrorism is evident. You've admitted it yourself that whenever certain words are used, certain rhetoric is used, automatically what comes to mind? Muslims. When the word terrorist or terrorism is mentioned, automatically you picture in your mind a dark-skinned person with a beard saying Allahu Akbar, trying to walk onto a plane and flying planes into buildings and blowing themselves up and whoever else they can blow up in the process. That's what people have been programmed to think when they hear certain phrases mentioned. And that fact is driven by racism. If you don't understand that, I don't know how you don't understand that, how you can't see it. It's always a common enemy with a common cause, with our common God on our side from the American standpoint. America's good, God's on our side. Those brown people over there are the enemies. They're the bad guy. The devil's over there with them. And so it's us against them. And that's just how it is. And so Brother C.L. Edwards is back, but I'll let you respond.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm sorry, phone
Well,
call.
I would like to encourage you with something positive because this has had a bit of a confrontational tenor. I don't want to be confrontational, So I want to give you some positive, encouraging news. And that is not every person has had the same experience you have, right? You may have, living in Texas, and you've traveled quite a bit around the country, even around the world. You may have experienced a lot of encounters with people who hear the word terrorist and automatically a character comes to mind. It looks like Osama bin Laden, I've only encountered that like twice ever. There are circles of people, there are groups of people who, when they use that word, they mean the dictionary definition. And it doesn't carry a bunch of baggage. For me, for example, if I were to use that word, I would mean what the word means, not some ethnic group. And so I want to encourage you that not everybody sees it with that taint of bias.
I know.
What?
I don't need you.
Sorry.
I don't need you to tell me that not everyone sees it with that bias because I didn't make that claim. So I'm fully aware of that. Matter of fact, I'm not one that sees it with that bias, by example. So, but I recognize the racism within the racism, and that I know how these people think, right? And so no, I didn't make a blanket statement saying that all white people think this way. Yeah, well, okay, yeah, go ahead.
And minimally, what I'm trying to get at is in the environments that I've been in, that's scarce. And so I don't want you to be burdened by the idea that it's predominant, when at least in some regions and in some social circles, it's very scarce.
To say that is to, I don't know, it's almost to undermine the ongoing effort by the people of power, the people who make these movies that we've mentioned, the people who write these headlines, their ongoing efforts to criminalize and villainize and dehumanize people of color and uh, Muslims throughout the world who are labeled unjustly time and time and time again. So it's almost like you're making excuses. To be honest, uh, it sounds like you're making excuses for the injustice and trying to pretend it away as though the dirt's not laying in the doorway and it's just swept up under the rug. And we're going to just pretend that it's not there, but it is there. And this is not the first time you and I have discussed this. Not even close. We've had this conversation time and time and time again, and it always has the same result. I'm telling you that the racism is there. The elements are there. It's driven by racism, and you continue to deny that. And you deny that by trying to, act as though the people that you associate with in your lifetime and so forth aren't those types of people and so forth. But when you look at the big picture and the ongoing effort and the headlines and the movie after movie after movie that the brother mentioned, um, it's to suggest that they're failing in their attempt to demonize and label Muslims as terrorists, even though they do it every time they get a chance. They do it time and time and time again. So I'm not sure if you realize what you're missing, or if you are just trying to pretend
Kenny,
that it's not an issue.
let me interject for a second. I give credit to AK that he knows the dictionary definition of terrorist, but let's keep it real. The average American doesn't. How many people are coming home from hard days of work to read a book or to search words in a dictionary, versus how many people come home to watch Disney Plus and and surf TikTok? So everybody, he says that people in his circle, that's great. You have an excellent circle. But I was involved in the Islamophobia industry. So, there can't be I don't know that many people doesn't apply, because I've seen this. I was involved in this industry where millions of dollars were exchanging and being used. Broadcast television across some of the largest Christian networks in the world, not just in America, being broadcast and beamed off of the largest Christian-owned satellites and being beamed all across the world and purposely being beamed into the Middle East was Islamophobic content that specifically outright said that certain types of people are terrorists and they are what terrorism is, as opposed to other groups of people. Other groups of people are God's people, the sons of God, good Christian people, civilized people, and other types of people are not, until they change their religion, until they change their culture to be like the good group of people. And that's a trope that goes back 500 years. You can go all the way back to the Reconquest of when the Reconquistadors came down from the north into southern Spain and destroyed the civilization of Al-Andalus, and they established the first instance of pure blood, or the one drop rule, where you had to be able to prove you had an ancestor who was a European and a Christian going back 3 generations in order to participate in the new Christian Spanish society. From there, our modern idea of racism came forth. So the whole entire modern idea and application of racism as we know it started from Islamophobia. It started from uh, white Christians wanting to expel Muslims from Europe and cleanse Europe of any trace of Islam and make it a complete Christian stronghold. That's where it originated from. At the first the beginning of the age of discovery comes with I can't remember the Pope's name, but one of the popes issuing an edict saying that the Western powers had the go ahead and the ability, and they had no reason to respect any ownership of land, any ownership of property, any other sovereign nation outside of Western Europe that was not white and was not Christian, and that anyone who was not white and who was not Christian was in servitude perpetually to the church and to the Western powers. That was the onset of the age of discovery. That leads us up to today. That mindset, that attitude has not vanished off the earth. It hasn't vanished out of America. It still exists. Whether people are conscious of it or they're unconscious of it, it's built into our worldview, how we look at the world, how we put people into categories, how we categorize our own self, how we look at ourselves and how we look at other people. So let's take another word besides terrorism. Let's use the word thug. If you say the word thug on any YouTube channel and ask people in the comment section, describe what a thug looks like, and I guarantee you the majority of the people will put forth the image that they have been given in media. Because even the rappers that we see calling themselves thug and perpetuating a thug culture, they're just employees of multinational billion-dollar corporations who have spent millions and billions of dollars to perpetuate an image of what a thug is, and in turn they've raked in billions of dollars. So racism isn't hiding out somewhere. It's not undercover, and we need to stop talking about it and to make it go away. Racism is big business. It's been big business since the 70s to portray Muslims as terrorists. It was big business for Hollywood. It was big business they built CNN and built Fox News on the back of perpetuating this racist imagery. It's big business for the military industrial complex. So since America, since the 90s, has made its incursions into the Middle East, the profits of the military industrial complex have skyrocketed through the roof. So racism is behind billions of, if not trillions of dollars being moved and transferred across the globe to various different organizations and different individuals. And who gets to be on top, and who gets to be portrayed as one way, and who gets to be at the bottom, and who gets to be portrayed as another way. That's why it's not just talk. It has a real life, tangible result. That's why there's a global difference in wealth and standard of living between the global north and the global south. It was created. That didn't just happen because people in the global north are smarter and better, and people in the global south are stupid and immoral, as some people would like to portray. It happened because of systematic. I want to use another triggering word, but it happened because of racism, and not just any old racism. I don't like people of this color, and it happened because people decided that a certain race had to be supreme over other races.
Okay. Brother, you've said that very well, certainly better than I could articulate it. You've said it very well. So may Allah bless you for your efforts and your intentions. Alan, listen, I'm going to have to shut the show down at this point because it's time for Maghrib, and I need to pray. Matter of fact, Isha is approaching already, so I need to pray. And but thank you for joining the panel. And you're welcome to come back again. Alan, drive safe. I'm sure you have a final a final word you'd like to give in?
Oh, let me. Okay. Sorry. During his presentation, I wanted to thank Mr. Edwards real quick. You've drawn attention, of course, to the fact that racism has existed historically. It does exist today. Of course, everybody would acknowledge that. I'm willing to consider that it's perhaps more prevalent than I've given consideration to. Same with Islamophobia. I'm willing to consider that it's more prevalent than I have acknowledged before. So I'm going to think that through and process and rewatch this video. But I do thank you for your time, Mr. Edwards. There have been periods of time where you were respectful, and I appreciate those. And same to you, Ken. I love you as a brother. Mr. Edwards, I love everybody in the world. I just don't know you yet. But you guys are pretty great. I would encourage you to maybe give equal consideration in the future. But I don't want to be called a victim. So no big deal. God bless you, though. May God's grace and peace be with both of you.
Okay. Out there. All right.
Just one last word before you go, Kenny.
Sure, brother.
Why, again, with this, these global multinational billion-dollar corporations, why do they seem to have the need to make content over and over and over again for the last 50 years of portraying dark-skinned, non-white people, non-Christian people as violent, inherently violent, and against America, the enemies of America? They've done that for all these years. Why? So do you think they're ever going to start making movies and television shows about white terrorists being inherently violent and being against America? You know why they won't do it? Because their audience wouldn't want to see it, because their audience would be triggered, because their audience wouldn't want to see themselves portrayed that way and those words being applied to them.
That's right. That's why I tried to ask him, do you think you're trying to undermine their efforts and their ongoing effort to label Muslims as the villains? And do you think they would not still be doing it all these years later, year after year after year? They've been doing it. If they weren't having success with it, of course they're having success. That's why they keep doing it. You don't keep doing something unless you're having success at it. So obviously there are. So, all right, brother, I need to get out of here, but thank you for joining the panel. Thank you, A.K. Manning, for joining the panel. And thank you, everyone, for listening. I do bear witness there's no God other than Allah. And I bear witness that Muhammad is his final servant, the seal of all prophets. One last time, if you'd like a copy of this book when it releases on September the 5th of this year, Your Right to Self-Identify and My Right to Disagree, you could get a free copy by joining my book launch team. Send me an email at info@kennyballmer.com, and I'll give you the details about how to get just a free book. I'll give you a free book for joining the book launch team. Info@kennyballmer.com, and I look forward to hearing from you. So we'll leave it at that. Brother, thank you once again. And I'll leave everyone by saying Assalamu alaikum, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, alhamdulillah, rabbil alameen.